Star Wars 1313. It's now become legend on what could go wrong with a Star Wars game, but there's something happening that could bring it back to life, alongside some very interesting Ahsoka news. Welcome to Star Wars Uplink, your place for everything Star Wars gaming, the TV shows, and the movies. Let's jump in.
Just you reconsider playing that message for him.
So there's a name in Star Wars that we've all heard rumblings of when it comes to the gaming space, but we haven't heard the name in a long time, and that is Star Wars 1313. At least we haven't heard it in a positive sense until now. Backstory, before we get into the real juicy details. There was a project that was announced a while ago now, and it's led by Amy Hennig, who was one of the big people on Uncharted. She launched a game studio. Alongside a Marvel project, they announced that they're going to be working on a Star Wars project. And you know who just recently joined the team at Skydance New Media?
Who's that?
Someone that worked on 1313.
Oh, what do you know?
What do we know about 1313?
It was kind of like a bounty hunter take / Boba Fett continuation story-ish.
Yeah, more of like the teenage years of Boba Fett.
Yeah, so it definitely had a lot of like grungy kind of takes.
It was set on the level of Coruscant, 1313, because there's over 1,000 levels of Coruscant. Deep in the underworld, the opening scene that we saw at E3 many years ago was a gameplay session going down on this ship, going deeper and deeper and deeper into Coruscant's underworld, which would have been freaking amazing. But there's a couple things that went wrong with that title. One, this was towards the end of LucasArts as a thing, in terms of the gaming space. And then we get to George Lucas's love of disrupting what people had planned at LucasArts. George Lucas never was very involved in the gaming space, but when he did get involved, it caused chaos. And the biggest chaos was 1313 was originally supposed to be an original character. Then George Lucas got involved, and it became a Boba Fett origin story to tie into the Coruscant-based Underworld TV show that he was playing around with.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So that's kind of like the backstory here.
That's fascinating. Just the thought of this like master plan. And now we have this like background master plan going on that we're now seeing almost like just with Dave Filoni and their kind of world that they've been creating. And
it's like George Lucas V2.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Because we did eventually get a continuation of Boba Fett's story. Obviously not a younger version of Boba Fett like his versions would have been, but we are seeing more of that side of things. We're seeing Ahsoka. We're seeing continuations of these stories that George Lucas had a part in and was heavily inspired. Like he was involved in those processes in certain ways. Obviously, in the case of 1313, it wasn't the greatest ways. No. But he was involved, and that was part of his master plan was to make everything about Boba Fett.
Fair enough. Great character. Need to see more.
I'd love to see more. I'd love to see that specific area of Boba Fett's story told as well. I think that would have been very fascinating to see.
Yeah, I've definitely seen Boba Fett woven in through the books and things. He's definitely on Coruscant. There is definitely a strong tie there in his little ragtag team of bounty hunters and
I mean, we see him
and villainy.
We see him in Jedi Survivor, and he's like 23. So
I missed that part.
Yeah. There's a mission in Jedi Survivor about it's on the bounty hunter side. You go through, you do all the bounty hunters, and you give the pucks to this one bounty hunter named Cage, and she's like, oh, nope, your bounty's pretty high, so now I'm going to turn you in. And then right before any of that happens, you fight her, and then right before you're about to kill her, Boba Fett comes in.
Oh,
and it's like, nope, okay. I've got a bounty on her head, and I always collect on my bounties.
Fascinating.
Yeah. But switching gears back to Skydance, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
Well, Amy Hennig has at this point, a long history with Star Wars games. Attempted Star Wars games? Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Way back in the day. Alongside when Jedi Fallen Order was announced, there was this sizzle reel of some Star Wars projects that they were working on. And I think of that highlight reel, maybe one game came out of it.
Oof.
It was a little rough. But in that highlight reel was this project called Project Ragtag, is what we eventually came to know it as. And it was heavily inspired by the Uncharted games. considering Amy Hennig's past. It makes a lot of sense, but heavily inspired by Uncharted, and it wanted to tell a more linear story in Star Wars and heavily lean into the storytelling aspect because they brought Doug Chiang on. They brought a bunch of Lucasfilm people on to brainstorm this story. Very much Indiana Jones, Star Wars-esque, Uncharted style game. Would have been awesome.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about this a little bit before in previous episodes. Just what that game would have meant and what that game would have might have looked like and stuff like that. I wonder now that they're saying, oh, she might be getting back to this, and now there's a new guy that may be on the project sort of thing. Now that they're saying this, what would that story look like now?
I wonder if it'll be even... I doubt it's the same game.
Oh, absolutely not. Actually, I kind of hope it's not, because after so long, we don't want to be expecting the same thing. And I think as we grow and as people... that story, no matter what it was, would have to change.
Yeah. And I wonder, there's always these background stories around Lucasfilm, especially in the game space, of wanting certain things to happen. Respawn was heavily pressured into making not a lightsaber story, but a more bounty hunter-esque story. They pushed back on that and said, no, we're doing one on lightsabers, and this is our idea for it, and we're either going to do this or we won't do a Star Wars game. Is basically what they said. But going in and saying the plan was originally for a Star Wars game to be released in this linear, more story-based game. The reason it failed was EA.
Lovely. Change
of strategies at EA. Change of relationships in terms of what they wanted to bring into Star Wars, and expectations changing for what they wanted from the Star Wars franchise. When you make a Star Wars project, in the video game space at least, probably in other areas, especially in the video game space, there is a Star Wars tax licensing fee that you have to pay. And usually it's paid over the course of the sales or upfront. But there was some interview or something that was said that basically you'd have to make 20% more sales on a Star Wars game than any other of their licenses.
Oh my gosh.
Which makes sense, but because it's Star Wars is massive, they're going to make 20% more sales.
Okay.
Look at the Jedi series.
Yeah.
Fallen Order was one of the best-selling single-player games when it released. It ended up selling 12 to 15 million or something like that. Jedi Survivor is doing very well, rating very well critically, as well as selling quite well, consistently being in the top 5, top 10. So there's that side of things. But Visceral, rest in peace, Visceral, because of these changes. So Amy Hennig left and was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. They tried to switch gears and do more of not quite MMO, but more online version of the game. That failed. And then Visceral just got dissolved as a studio. And a lot of people got laid off or just ingested into the beast that is EA. And that story kind of died. But something that we're probably going to see more of when it comes to Skydance New Media stuff is that expansion of the storytelling in the video game space. What does it look like for Star Wars 1313 people, as well as Uncharted people, as well as all of the people in these relationships with Lucasfilm? What does it look like for them to bring no, we're going to tell a story and then it's going to be a game? What does that look like?
Honestly, I think it'd be neat to see something a little bit more like Star Wars Visions that we've been seeing in the...
What do you mean by that?
Just something that's not necessarily canon. Let's just throw...
Okay. Really? In the story side, you don't want canon?
I mean, it doesn't have to be around canon characters, maybe is what I'm saying.
Are you thinking just more original characters or...
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, just give me a good story. That's Star Wars.
I think it's if it's story-based, I want it to be canon. But if it's, except for Visions. Visions is more, and it's not necessarily story-based, but it is.
Yeah.
Visions is more about the spectacle. It's about telling these very unique stories on the visuals, as well as these almost experiences in Star Wars we don't normally see. On the multiplayer side, I don't freaking care about canon at all.
Yeah.
Put Starkiller in there, put Ahsoka, put whoever.
Yeah.
Let me fight as an overpowered Ewok with a lightsaber.
Sweet.
I don't care if a multiplayer game is canon. And that's one of the reasons why the Battlefront games kind of floundered a little bit, is because 2015, they're everything has to be canon.
Yeah.
It's well, technically, would Palpatine be alive during this time? Or would he be on Jakku? it wasn't technically canon, but that was kind of the guiding force of we want it to be as canon as possible.
Huh.
In a multiplayer game, I don't freaking care. Make the campaign canon, but have whatever you want to. Let me have like 5 Luke Skywalkers fighting against 5 Darth Mauls.
It's interesting that you bring up the point about Battlefront 2015. I almost wonder if that's some of the holdup with the gaming, just in general of Star Wars.
Are those games?
It's those limitations that are strangely self-imposed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder what the holdup is. Honestly, that's my real question. What's the holdup, guys? Come on.
What's taking you so long?
Yeah. We've gotten one game in like how many years? Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something's got to give here.
I feel like this is what's so great. This year, officially, it was a few months ago, I believe, EA lost the exclusivity license for Star Wars. So technically, we can get whatever we want in terms of Star Wars games now. People, individual studios, anything can go to Lucasfilm and say, hey, I've got an idea for a Star Wars game. And that team will say, Lucasfilm Games, yes, no, how about this? They have that opportunity, like the movies now. You as a director can approach Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and say, hey, I've got an idea for a Star Wars story. And then you can work on it. Like that's I believe Acolyte was made from basically a lunch or something like that.
Yeah.
Leslie Headland was like, yeah, I've got an idea for a Star Wars thing, and I'd really like to do this. Kathleen Kennedy said, well, what about this? And it'd be great for this timeline. And she's like, sweet, that works even better. Didn't know anything about that timeline, and now I'm going to read all the books.
Plug me in.
I think that's what's great, and I hope to see more of that in the gaming space. Like now that we have that opening of the license, I feel like Respawn is now the Star Wars studio within EA. Obviously, they've got Apex as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to all of the Star Wars stuff from EA, you have Galaxy of Heroes way over here as a mobile game, and then you have Respawn that does all of the other stuff. Because they know how to make a Star Wars game, do it well, make it quickly, tell a good story, and get good reviews and get good sales. Yeah. While DICE always had controversy when they did any kind of Star Wars game. First game came out. Oh, it's not very open. They didn't have a class system, which a lot of people wanted. Oh, it's set only original trilogy. I was fine with that, but a lot of people wanted more expansion. Oh, it doesn't have a campaign. And then they got Battlefront 2, and Battlefront 2 had a campaign, but it didn't launch very well. They had the whole loot box controversy and all of that stuff. So they've always had issues when you look over at DICE and Battlefront as a series. And then you have Respawn that's like, yeah, they're doing good. And then we've got Ubisoft that could release their game as soon as next year, depending on how things go. And you also have Star Wars Eclipse, which is still a thing.
I guess.
Yeah. It's still a thing.
Have we heard anything about Star Wars Eclipse?
No, but it was rumored to be at Star Wars Celebration for a little while. And it was like, we're going to give it a little more time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We have a lot of studios that are working on things, places that we know. And now that it's not all under EA, I feel like we're probably going to get more consistently. Yeah. And maybe we could see like Ahsoka come on.
Be cool.
Perfect segue.
Wow.
Our topic is about Ahsoka.
Yes, the sprinklings of new interviews and things that we've been getting as we get closer and closer to the time, huh?
It's great. We also have a release date. August 23rd is when it's going to be released, and it will be airing on a Wednesday.
Interesting.
Like always.
Okay. Yeah.
I miss the Friday ones, man.
I
Big
know.
time. I miss the Friday Star Wars, and I will always say this forever.
Friday's the best day.
August 23rd. Definitely later in the month than a lot of people expected. Some people were expecting early August, and I was like, there's no way. Dave Filoni wants as much time to work on it as possible, get it in as good a place as it can be before it launches, and also just get it later on in the year as more people, as the summer winds down, more people are going to be more willing to watch a show.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of shows will end during the summer, because less people are inside watching shows.
At least we should hope so.
I mean, there's usually a trend. That's why video game sales slump during the summer. But movie sales, usually they're big in the summer because it's a big air-conditioned place that you can go with your family.
True. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those kinds of things when you look at, you wouldn't think it's there, but yes.
fascinating.
But we've got a lot of details for Ahsoka as they're ramping it up. More so than I thought. Like they're like you said, they're sprinkling it throughout. Like each week we almost get something new. We get some more details about Ray Stevenson's character. We get more details around the state of the Inquisitors, what could possibly go in terms of that direction, new pictures and all that stuff. It's pretty exciting.
I'm definitely ready to watch it. The other day, I was like making the bed and I was like, man, I haven't watched a Star Wars thing in a really long time.
Yeah.
Like, am I hankering for some Star Wars shows? Wow, what a novel thing. I was like, I should just relish in this moment. Like, they have me hungry for Star Wars. I'm so happy about that.
Yeah. And I think that will be the strategy going forward is we have these moments where you want more Star Wars and then you get it eventually, but it's like it makes you savor it a little bit more each time. But we got some details from the Empire magazine. They always do something around Star Wars, whether it's a feature on The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, the TV shows in general, interviews with Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Or if we look at something like the movies, anytime there was a big movie, they'd have a release, an interview, a bunch of pictures would come out from it. And they're doing the same thing with Ahsoka. So that's where a lot of this information is coming from. Dave Filoni has said this in terms of where Ahsoka is in her place in the galaxy at this point. Quote, she's a wanderer at this point, and is in a lot of ways wary of an organization as such because of the power that comes with it as a group. She walks a path that basically died out a long time ago, and there aren't many like her left, if any. So that's a lonely thing. What is that life like? If you are a loner, you have a very small circle of friends. What is it like then when you try to open back up? I think it's funny that he mentioned if any left.
Yeah, come on. Come on.
This is Star Wars. Don't treat us like children. Freaking Ray Stevenson's character is an Order 66 survivor.
Yep.
There's other people.
Don't
kid us.
Come on. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Please.
But we have details on Ahsoka as a character. And we saw bits and pieces of this in Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian of how like she's still trying to like find her purpose and looking for a community, but also knows like how crumbling and fragile that can be through her time in the rebellion.
Yeah, Ahsoka's in that unique space of having seen the best and the worst and having those really hard experiences of having to break away. And so I'm sure she's kind of jaded in a lot of ways of just being like, you know what, I'd really rather not be a part of things, but I still want to help sort of thing. I think this is going to be really interesting, especially because we're seeing kind of this Rebels tie-in with the Rebels characters, and we're seeing this new order coming into play and how like that's still trying to be a force for better, but we're going to see Ahsoka kind of struggling with that too. Like,
do I hang out with Luke more?
Right.
Do I go to the New Republic? Do I just go on my own thing? Do I like attack Thrawn? Like, do I focus on the warlords through the galaxy?
Right. And I think she'll really understand that she can't do it alone. I think that's why we see her going to Sabine.
Yeah. It's like, fine, I can't fight the entire empire by myself anymore.
And Sabine still seems like a pretty isolated character.
Something I've noticed, is she a Mandalorian anymore? Because it does not look like she's a Mandalorian anymore.
Who knows? We're going to find out. I don't know. She has to be. She has to be some sort of Mandalorian something.
But she doesn't have any of the armor anymore. She's just like in this pilot outfit.
Yeah. I don't know.
Still rocking the cool hair though.
Yeah, that's a question that does not have an answer yet.
Yeah.
We'll keep you posted.
Oh yeah.
So we're seeing Ahsoka kind of ragtag these isolated individuals as best she can. She's making her own
little mini Avengers.
Yeah.
It's like Ant-Man or Captain America's Revengers team or whatever in Civil War.
Yeah. But at the same time, she's going to also rebel against having this group of people because it's going to be like, oh gosh, we're going to make this power thing again. I just can't. So it's going to be really interesting.
I love that idea of her like realizing that she can't go against the galaxy, like the evil in the galaxy by herself. And also I feel like she's just kind of like lonely a little bit, like a little sad, like, oh, where's my buds?
I think it's interesting. I've been feeling kind of like Ahsoka's been flat as far as the live action that we've seen.
Yeah,
so
there's no depth there.
Yeah, like she's just kind of been this like monochrome character
Hey, I'm
who
Ahsoka.
just pops in, helps to do a good deed, and then kind of floats away, and we're just kind of like left with, okay, cool, that was Ahsoka. So I'm really hoping, I'm trying not to get my hopes too up, but I am definitely hoping that we see a lot more of that struggle within her. We have to. I mean, come on. This is her show.
Yeah.
But I did say that about Boba Fett, and it got a little taken over by Mando.
Yes, but Dave Filoni created Ahsoka, wrote all the episodes of Ahsoka, and wants Ahsoka in everything, so we have to keep that in mind, too.
True. So she will be the star.
Oh, yeah.
This will be her show.
And, like, on that side of things, like what you're saying of Ahsoka being like very kind of flat so far, I think that's due to what Dave Filoni says in this next quote. Is he says this: the biggest challenge was there's a whole bunch of the audience that know her and a whole bunch that don't. She has one foot in the Star Wars that a lot of people know because of her connection to Anakin, and yet she's still all new and can go in her own direction, in her own way. I think that makes her an interesting bridge between what came before and what's really possible. Because if you ask, like, I have friends that love Star Wars, watch every single live action thing ever, cannot watch the animated stuff, have not watched. And I understand, there's 7 freaking seasons of Clone Wars.
Yeah, it's a lot.
They're amazing. I love every single episode. I've watched the series probably like 5 times. But it's an investment.
That is a huge time investment.
The Clone Wars is like an anthology too, so there's like a right way to watch it. If you watch it how they've got it laid out on Disney Plus, you're gonna be super confused because you're like, where, what, ooh, what? What are we doing? Wait, oh, what?
Wait, what? Yeah.
So they have this really interesting problem of like, we need to tell people about Ahsoka, but also we need to respect the people who know that Ahsoka's here. How do we do this?
That is true. It is a really tough spot. But do I feel like they've been doing it well so far? Not really.
Well, they can't really without making Mandalorian the Ahsoka show.
Right. Fair enough.
So they put her there and they're like, hey, this is a person. And then all of the Ahsoka people are like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah.
All the people that don't have any idea about Ahsoka be like,
getting
okay, interesting.
slowly introduced to her.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which I think is an interesting strategy. But a lot of people didn't watch Book of Boba Fett and were super confused when Mandalorian Season 3 came out.
True.
So that's another part of the challenge.
Yeah. You can't assume that everyone's watching all of these shows.
I think they would like to assume that.
Well, yeah. I mean, clearly they did assume that.
And
seeing how
like,
they put
what?
a tremendous moment in Mandalorian's timeline story in Boba Fett. So,
yeah.
Come on, guys. Clearly that was the agenda. It was like, oh no, everyone's going to be watching this. Or at least they're going to find out that there's
watch
Mandalorian.
Everything. Everyone else watches everything,
exactly.
Right? And then everyone's like, what? Why does Mando have Grogu again? His name's Grogu?
What happened to Luke?
What happened to baby?
When did that happen? Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Who's this?
Who's Grogu? What?
We're going by this name now? I don't get it.
So there's a lot of those different pieces and a lot of those experiences just like that they're going to have to really go past because not everyone watched Rebels. I would say more people watch Clone Wars than Rebels.
Yeah.
So there's that side of things. You have to bring in the original trilogy fans. You have to bring in the Clone Wars fans as well. The fans of The Mandalorian. Like there's a lot riding on this. I'm really fascinated to see how they pull it off because it's a lot of different challenges that they have to do.
And I feel like every kind of faction of Star Wars people likes a different thing. And we can't expect them to hit all those points.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just hope they try to do something Ahsoka. You know, like let's just stick with Ahsoka.
Honor her character.
Yeah, please don't be trying to please all of us because you're never going to. Just honor that character.
Yeah.
Give her a good story that we can get behind. You know, like that's really all we need.
Yeah. And then eventually, after everyone craps on it, and like 10 years pass, everyone's gonna go back like, hey man, it's actually pretty good.
Yep.
That's the Star Wars cycle of like, I hate this thing.
It is the way.
Wait, no. Okay. Now I really like that thing. Man, why did I hate that before? This is so underrated.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because the things that come out keep getting worse and worse, and then we go back and we're like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
I just think that time passes and we're able to understand the broader story as more pieces get laid out.
Could be.
But we'll see. Let us know your thoughts on what we could see in terms of the new Star Wars game, as well as what this news about Ahsoka could be. Let us know in the comments or contact@uplinkpodcast.com. Check out our YouTube channel if you're listening to this on anywhere you find podcasts. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can also pick up where you left off wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, you can find us there. As always, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.